Hey everyone, so I'm annotating another chess game. This was a tough loss, playing the black side against d4. White was just dominating positionally, and there's so much tension that I blundered a pawn and then blundered the exchange. So yeah, I started going through this, but yeah, let's finish it up. So d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, bishop e4, queen b3. And this is like the 8th or 10th move in the Masters database. And seeing here, bishop captures c3, check, queen captures c3. Yeah, a lot of wins for white here. The top move is c5 with the idea of d captures c5, knight c6, which looks very unintuitive because let's say we have a3. Okay, instead of bishop captures c3, we have bishop captures c5. Okay, and the bishop is well placed. White's queen has to move before they can play b4. Okay, so knight c6. And looking at c5, what if white plays a3? The top move is bishop takes, and if queen takes, pawn takes, and black has knight c6 with tempo, queen d1, and black is slightly better trading up their c-pawn for white's d-pawn. But after b captures c3, bishop captures c3, what about bc? Okay, so black just develops, and this is something I have to recognize. My instinct move was to play cd, but after cd, white fixed up their pawns. So yeah, just leave the tension there because white probably doesn't want to triple up their pawns. And yeah, pushing d5 does not drop a pawn. So after d5, pawn takes, pawn takes, knight out. Yeah, looking at d5 right now. Let's look at the engine. It likes knight a5. What about queen b5? There's b6 just to make everything solid. The engine, yeah, b6 is a move. It also likes knight e4, threatening the c pawn. F3, a6, queen a4, knight takes, queen c2. And we're going a little deep, but knight a5, good to see this as a critical move. Okay, so I instantly got rid of that tension. Played b6, looking to fianchetto my light square bishop. I flick in h6, doesn't seem harmful. Bishop e7. White plays f3. Somewhat mysterious, taking away the f3 square for the knight. But it does give the bishop a hiding spot in f2. And I play d5. This is something I've seen in previous game reviews. The engine really likes these um, center pawn moves, fighting for the center. So d5 and a queenside castle just really surprised me. Um, yeah, looking at, say, pawn takes, bishop takes, d5. Hmm. Yeah, this might actually be a blunder because of e5. So after this pawn move, g5, bishop f2. And the engine actually prefers e takes d5. Hmm. This looks a little counterintuitive, blocking on my light square bishop. Okay, so going back to the game, queenside castle, knight bd2, and I'm looking to add a defender of my knight on f6. Knight h3. I was happy to see this move because if I castle queenside, which I was looking at doing, their knight on h3 looks a little out of place. So I played g5, bishop g3, knight h5, because on queen e7, preparing to queenside castle, there is this bishop move. And as soon as I see it, realize this might work out tactically for me. Yeah, again, in this game, um, ended the calculation here. After seeing I was dropping my c7 pawn, but I see rook c8. And if bishop back, I win the I win the queen. And on rook c8, c captures d5, knight captures d5 with a nice double attack. So I'm winning the bishop, trying to force myself to calculate more. So let's say queen d3, rook takes with check, king b1. Yeah, in completely dominating position. That is one thing I'm trying to improve and understand why I'm stopping these calculations early. Part of it is time pressure, and part of it is laziness, just bad habits. Yeah, so if I could play it again, queen e7 seems like the best move because tactically c7 is protected. So instead, I'm trying to chase away the dark square bishop. So this prepares queen e7 and castling. But I'm somewhat critical of this move. Black's knight is out of the game, but so is white's. But yeah, I could have been more productive here. Maybe even f5. Well, not f5. Um, but yeah, queen e7 was probably the right move. When I played knight h5, I didn't consider how misplaced my knight was going to be. So queen e7, played d3, castled, king b1. White's probably preparing rook c1. King b8, g4, knight f6, bishop g3, pawn takes, queen takes, and I didn't realize how vulnerable my c7 pawn was going to be. And I'm trying to figure out how I could have known this. Okay, g4, it's a natural move with bishop g3 as a follow-up with a beautiful diagonal on the dark squares. Black does not have a dark square bishop, and honestly, I have no way to combat this dark square bishop. I can't even stick a knight onto d6. So let's say knight here. Rook c1, knight over here. After takes, takes. I can't even take. After takes, there's queen takes. So how could I have seen this? Um, Recognize that white has an unopposed dark square bishop. They own the dark squares. I need to be able to dispute it somehow. White position their pawns in such a way as to accentuate their dark square bishop. At this point, it already feels like white is winning. I would say the position's +2. Let's say it's not. Um, if it's not, what is the defensive resource that I'm missing? So during the game, I looked at queen d5, e4 falls to, doesn't fall to a fork. I saw knight f4, but after knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, is there compensation? On e5, pawn takes, knight takes. Save, rook takes. Rook takes, bishop takes, queen takes, pawn takes. Yeah, white has a couple of pawns. This looks rough. Um, and by playing this pawn move, I'm encouraging opening up the file. If my king wasn't in the way and c5 was an option, this would relieve a lot of pressure, but yeah, this pin on the c7 pawn, I didn't realize how strong it was. Okay, knowing that this c7 pawn is pinned, I mean, I recognized it during the game, but I didn't appreciate it that much. So knowing that, I think rook c8, and if pawn takes, knight takes, maybe it's just that simple. Um, let's say queen c2. No, that's a fork. Let's say queen d3. King a8. Yeah, I wonder if this was a better try. Rook c8. Let's mark that. Okay, rook c8. Okay, so instead I opened up the c file for white. Then I played rook c8. White plays e4. Knight back. And these moves are all bad. Yeah, I'm not sure what my plan is here. Hmm. I'm rerouting my knight to g6, but without a plan. Does e5 work? Okay, so knight f8. One thing it does do tactically is add a third defender to c7. Nothing else. Yeah, maybe rook h, d8, rook c1, knight f8. Bishop e2, rook d7, rook c2, king over, and it feels very passive for black, but this is one way to try to wiggle out of this bad position. I'd say white is still better, but it's a lot better than what I had in the game. Yeah, knight f8, knight g6, rook over, and if pawn takes, rook takes, rook takes, knight takes. White can pick up a pawn. I'm looking at bishop takes e4 check, pawn takes, queen takes check, but bishop d3 saves everything. Yeah, this knight looks pretty bad. Um, there are a lot of trades. This is probably better than what happened in the game. Um, so I was hoping for that. Just showing this variation, if pawn takes first, I capture with check. Okay, so d5 and pawn up, and this was a blunder. I just give up the g5 pawn for free. So instead of pawn to h5, what are some other candidate moves? I like knight to f4. If knight takes, pawn takes, bishop f2. This looks okay. I do have to be careful. White has some strong pawns here, blunting my light square bishop. White still has a better position, better minor pieces, um, better coordinated pieces. Black's mini plan is to maneuver their knight to the e5 square, where it tries to stop this pawn storm. But yeah, h5 with the idea of gh, knight h, bishop f2, just relieving some pressure on that diagonal. And then knight over, take, take, bishop f1. This looks fine for black. Yeah, there are some options here, but not sure why I didn't go for these. Okay, so I dropped the pawn. And I tried to make the game complicated. I felt the game trending in the wrong direction. So I knew this wouldn't win back a pawn, assuming that white played the best moves. And here, I was hoping they wouldn't see this pawn move. But yeah, it's natural that they did. I was hoping for this trade. Bishop takes. Probably pawn takes. Just because on queen takes, there's rook over, and this pawn's dropping. But yeah, bishop f1, and my second blunder here. To focus on winning back a pawn, and also at the prospect of trading off white's dark square bishop. I overlook a tactic with a loose piece. So the best move here, probably rook d2. No, I don't think that works tactically, just because bishop takes, pawn takes. There's still a fork here. And it's even worse. Not worse. Yeah, rook over. So it's about the same. And all this stems from the fact that this c7 pawn, it's backwards. There's so much pressure. Yeah, so in all variations, I'm dropping a piece. But I do get some pawns back. This still feels losing for black. You make a couple moves here, I would be very excited to make a draw and repeat positions. Finally get a chance to activate my light square bishop. So on pawn takes, there's queen, check. And oh, there's no en passant. Yeah, the pawn's too far up. I'm trying to be tricky. There's a double attack on the rooks. And white threatens rook f7. I go with this defense, which seems losing. I'm putting myself in a pin. This is the first sign that this is a bad move. I don't see queen d5 check. So if I saw queen d5 check, king c8 is forced. And king c8. And then in the game, there's queen a8. Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, this also loses everything. There was time trouble. So what is the best defense here? Looking for a more active defense. Queen d6, rook f7, king c8. Yeah, it may have been a better try. So this move threatens queen d1. No, it doesn't threaten mate. Um, yeah. So this was a long analysis of the game. I will say, I think I misplayed it with like knight f8 and also with d capture c4. Kind of walked into the attack. Um, some takeaways before I turn on the engine analysis. Positionally, there were weaknesses that I didn't even recognize during the game. I didn't see c7 pawn was a backwards pawn or that it was pinned until it was too late. I also didn't appreciate the fact that white had an unopposed dark square bishop. So I have to get better at evaluating the position. So all of these concepts I have knowledge of, but I didn't notice it during the game. So the application of it is not there. One recurring theme is not calculating until the position's quiet. So my blunder with pawn h5 dropped because I didn't look at white's forcing moves afterwards. And when I didn't go for queen e7 early in the game because I thought it dropped a pawn because of bishop captures c7, I stopped my calculation early there because I thought it dropped a pawn. Um, Another thing to note is to defend actively. So this position at the end, we were both in time trouble. I had 49 seconds to white's 59 seconds. I think it's still anyone's game here if I defended um, actively. Yeah, choosing to put myself into a pin is asking for tactics. Okay, let's turn on the computer analysis and see if there are any surprises. Okay, so there is a point where the game was even. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning in step three. Okay, so critical of g5. Like c5. Hmm. Okay, g5 it doesn't like. Tactically, I'm curious if this works out. Yeah, so bishop takes c7 as a blunder. Yep. Interesting, g4 is a mistake. Okay, so during my analysis, I'm completely misunderstanding this position. Okay, I did see bishop f3, but then queen c7 check, king a8, bishop a6. Yeah, I stopped calculations after queen takes c7. I thought this was bad. What about bishop takes? Okay. Yeah, rook takes. Okay. So this bishop's doing a very important job protecting that b7 square. Okay, so rook c8, e4, knight, knight to f8. So what's a better plan? The computer likes h5, which drops a pawn. Knight takes g. Hmm. Okay, so tactically it works out. Okay, so in this position, black isn't lost yet. Because of this h5 idea. And if g takes h5, g4, knight f4, pawn takes. Hmm. So I had the right idea of counterplay on the king side, but I had to do it with the pawns. And this whole idea undermines this e4 pawn, so now my bishop comes to life. Okay. Rook over. Wow, it still says this is even. Okay, h4, bishop e1, knight f4. Knight takes d5. Hmm. Yeah, why didn't I think of this knight move? Okay, so my desperado was the right idea, but I just, yeah, never considered knight takes d5. Okay. Yeah, and in the game, never considered queen takes h5, even during analysis, but this makes sense. It covers the h3 square. Okay. So yeah, tactically missing stuff. So bishop c6 was the final blunder. What is the defense? c4. Queen c3. Queen e7. Rook g8. Bishop d3. b3. Queen a3. Rook over. Okay. Yeah, during the game, never considered c4. Okay, so yeah, let's just review on this blunder. Yeah, I mean, the game is already pretty bad. So what is the best move? So uh, bishop c6, king b8, rook takes. Yeah, the engine's a little critical about king c8. I mean, the position's already lost. Um, so let's go back to the other two blunders. Yeah, I see knight d5 wins back the pawn, and I see bishop c6 loses. c4 is the move. Okay, so I missed those tactics, and I also missed the idea of the counterplay, these h5 ideas, and how quickly some pawn pushes can fizzle out white's pawns. Cool. So this was a long one. Thanks for sticking around.